only you can change your own world. And now that you've discovered us at the Institute of Practical Learning, you too can watch and learn just how to do it.
As we continue our quest for finding happiness, we have reached the country zone or blue zone, sometimes called nationality or tribe. It has many names, but the important point is it's all about place and how you feel about a particular place. Now, that may be the place you were born, or it may be the place you're living in right now. So it is human nature to attach oneself to a particular place. It's called association and adaptation. In this modern world, and I'm talking to you in 2024, people move around in countries a lot. Sometimes they move because they want to, sometimes they move because they have to. But the bottom line is people find themselves in a particular country and they can have mixed feelings about that country. And what we're going to talk about is how you can achieve happiness points, or call them tokens if you like. How can you achieve happiness living in that particular country? 1947, I think it was, there were 52 countries that signed up to be part of the United Nations. And that was after a catastrophic war from 39 to 45, if you're British, or some other dates if you're American. But it was a catastrophic war, and people from around the world said, well, we're never going to let that happen again. Let's have a place where everybody can get together. Let's set up an administrative system so we have peace everywhere. World peace, as people wish for occasionally. Now, it isn't as easy as that to achieve world peace. Right now, there are 192 countries, I think, that are members of the United Nations. So in those intervening years, a whole load of different countries have been set up and decided they'd like to be sheltered under the umbrella of the United Nations. Now, what good that's done them might be questionable. But we are talking here about human nature. That's not just human nature in general. It's about your human nature and how you can find happiness. So if we go back to the time of humans wandering around in Africa, some people say, or various other places, they were hunters and gatherers. We've talked about that in the earlier green zone. We're now in the blue zone and we're talking about countries. There were nomadic tribes that were going around gathering resources. Some of those tribes decided to settle somewhere. They'd found a really good place, and the cleverer ones set about farming so that they would be, as it were, guaranteed that the following year there would be crops and something for them to eat. Now, while they were sitting there on the edge of the river or the forest or whatever, people started building shelters, and maybe 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, in somewhere called Ur or Uruk, they decided to have towns, and from then on, people have built cities, and cities expanded into areas with boundaries. Boundaries became outside barriers to particular countries. Then, as humanity expanded, the countries weren't big enough for them, so they started to form unions with each other. And then you got people, leaders of particular groups or countries or unions, wanted to have more and more power. They got loads and loads of soldiers together and said, let's go and invade them. And you got empires and things called caliphates. Now, that may sound all a bit mad, but it's actually what's still going on right now. One might say that America wants to have an empire. Britain used to have an empire, and then we thought better of it and scuttled off out of quite a lot of those countries. Those countries themselves wanted independence. And so you're in the middle of all this, You may or may not say, oh, it's great, I'm part of an empire, or I'm safe in my country, or my country's at war with someone else. The other problem that happens is within a given country, you get rulers and governments. Now, governments are necessary. If your country does not have a government, it will descend into complete chaos. And you can see that happening today in a place called Haiti, where armed gangs and drug dealers and goodness who else are setting up and taking control for themselves. And they all fight with each other. Now, in my career, I have been involved in going to different countries and trying to help them establish a peaceful environment for the people that live there. But before I went to a country, I used to do what's called a PESTLE analysis, P-E-S-T-L-E analysis, because unless I could get ticks in enough of those boxes, I just wasn't going to go there and help them. Now, PESTLE has been covered earlier in the Institute of Practical Learning, but you need to understand what it is, because if you're going to get happiness points, you need to understand enough about PESTLE. And it stands for politics, economics, social, technical or infrastructure, legal and ethical. So if you're going to be happy living in a particular country, you need to find a balance. Are the politics acceptable? Are the economics of the country acceptable? Can you make a viable living? Are the social rules for that country okay? Are the technical or infrastructure existence in that country usable? Does the electricity come on? Does the water flow? Does the sewage back up? Do you have to wade through sewage, as people in some countries do, probably Haiti right now? Or is it nice and clean? Then there's the legal, and then there's the ethical. Now, there's a huge difference between what's legal and what's ethical. Sometimes the legal system gets totally abused, and the people in power at one particular time come up with all sorts of rules and laws in order to dominate, dictate, prosecute, murder, if you like, other people in that environment. And then there's the ethical. Now, ethical is important. You have to feel that emotionally you are happy being where you are. It's called the emotional or moral high ground. So the whole business of finding happiness within a country depends on a huge number of factors. Now, you may not be happy in a particular country at the moment, but it usually takes between 10 and 40 years for a person to really adapt to a country, especially if they haven't been born there. So you get first and second generation immigrants and things like that. If you are living in the country you were born in or where you were brought up in, you may well feel reasonably happy about it. Or if you're being led astray, you may feel very unhappy about it. Now, it's up to you, your disposition, and the people around you as to whether you even want to be happy or you get energy from being discontent. Because trust me, I have observed so many countries over so many years that if you want to be happy, then you need to learn how to adapt and adjust to what is going on around you as an individual. So that's part one of the country analysis, or the blue zone. And now we're going to move on to part two, which is being much more specific about where you can collect those happiness tokens, and possibly understanding why some people and some governments even choose to make it so difficult for you to see clearly where your human social energy can be used to help you see all the colours of happiness that there are around you. So let's move on to part two and party on.